I'm Frank Sesno, your host on Planet Forward, coming to you from our studios at the George Washington University here in Washington, D.C. We're talking with Robert Stone. He's director, a multi-award winning director, now of Earth Days. Earth Days seen on PBS on 40 years of Earth Day and how we got here. What's the point of the film? What are you trying to say?
Well, the point of the film is really to tell the backstory, exactly like you say, of how we arrived at this point. I think the environmental movement, by its very nature, is a forward-looking enterprise. It doesn't have a tendency to look back, and it's a very relatively young movement. But I really feel that the environmental movement would be well served in taking a look back at how we got here and what lessons can be learned from past successes and past failures in terms of going forward.
What lessons?
Well, there's many lessons. There's the first of all is that very rapid social and political and cultural change can happen and has happened faster than people can imagine if there's a grassroots movement to demand it. The downside of what happened in the course of the story of this film is that the environmental movement became part of the sort of polarizing culture wars that came out of the 60s that has really paralyzed us in terms of moving forward on a whole host of issues, education, energy, all these kind of things. So, and the environmental movement got caught up in that. It wasn't that. It was a very bipartisan. The environmental movement came out of the conservation movement that was a Republican idea. So it became a polarizing issue.
Your film opens with a parade of presidents from John Kennedy forward, each of them in their own way saying, we have to do something about this. It's filled with images of the 50s, big cars and sort of bucolic, perfect, not quite aware America. Did the environmental movement miss something on climate change? How do you connect the early days to the current days?
Well, they're very different issues. I mean, what happened in the first part of the film, which is 1950s, 1960s, was this awakening to the very idea of environmentalism. And we really, I think, went through almost an evolutionary leap in a single lifetime as a species, really just absolutely rethinking our role as human beings in relation to the planet.
As you point out, even the environmental impact statement was revolutionary.
Totally revolutionary.
To even bring that into...
And all of this came out, all the things we take for granted, clean air, clean water, the EPA, the fact that it even exists, the fact that there is an environmental impact statement, Superfund, endangered species, all this came out in the wake of the first Earth Day in 1970. But people were engaged because they saw this was visceral. It was pollution. You smelled it, you breathed it, you saw it in your rivers. It was all around you. And then there were those remarkable images from space. All of these things came together, kind of a perfect storm, which just captured people's imaginations and motivated them. There isn't that kind of an image or a symbol or an awareness about climate change. It's much more abstract.
So let me read, Robert Stone, something to you from a recent Gallup poll, and it says as follows. Gallup's annual update on Americans' attitudes toward the environment shows a public that over the last 2 years has become less worried about the threat of global warming, less convinced that its effects are already happening, and more likely to believe that scientists themselves are uncertain about its occurrence. What's happening?
Well, it's appalling because in the course of making this film, I've had the opportunity to speak with a great many of the top climate scientists in the world, and they're ringing a 12-alarm fire. It's serious. So the fact that this is happening is yet again, I think, a reason for seeing my film, because this is a failure of the environmental movement to communicate.
A failure of the environmental movement to communicate.
Yes.
What should they do now?
I think they should reframe the debate. It should not be about scary, the end of the world's coming, the polar bears, this ocean acidification, it's all going to be, that's not going to motivate people. People are not motivated by, despite Sarah Palin and all that, they're not motivated by fear. They're motivated by hope in order to advance things. And I think that energy, getting behind a revolution in energy for green jobs, for not funding countries that hate us, for all these kind of, I mean, if George Bush right after 9/11 had said, we're going to stop using fossil fuels in 10 years because we don't want to send our money to the Middle East, this country would have turned on a dime. because we were all, that would have been, that's something that people can get their heads around. And it gets you to the same place, but don't say we got to do this because the world's going to flood in 100 years.
So environmentalists need to become globalists, and they need to be communicators connecting on all these different levels. Just ringing the alarm by itself is not enough.
Not enough at all. No, you got to give people solutions, and what can they actually do?
And your next film is about energy.
Absolutely. That's what it's about. What do we do now? What do we do now? What are the real practical solutions that we have on the table to address this? And we actually, I believe, and a whole host of environmentalists who've been pro-environment for decades have come to the same rather shocking conclusion that the answer has been staring us in the face for decades.
Which is?
Nuclear power.
We're going to leave it there. People will have to see your film and hear more and weigh in, because that's what we let and ask people to do at Planet Forward, to comment on this. Do you think the answer is nuclear power? You heard Robert Stone just say so. Why have people taken the air out of the climate change balloon? Are they believing that it's less of a threat and less likely to affect them and their children in their lifetimes? We'd like to hear what you have to say. We'd like you to make your case at planetforward.org. Robert Stone, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.